welcome to another Arsecast Extra, as always, with James from Gunnerblog. James, or should I say, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's an evening Arsecast. I've got gin and tonic.
I've got a bottle of water.
Ever the professional.
Well, I mean, the beers I had before this recording probably are not the most professional.
Sure, but you're rehydrating.
Yeah, that's it.
Wise.
I'm rehydrating. I had half a chicken wrap and some chips.
You're going to be fine. We're going to set the football world to rights.
I think so.
We better explain the duck noise, I guess.
Well, yeah. I mean, if anyone doesn't follow you on Instagram, the sight of you as a giant duck at Gatwick Airport, Heathrow, Gatwick.
Airport.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Gatwick feels like the kind of airport where you can get away with anything. You know, Heathrow, it's probably a little more highbrow, but Gatwick, you can do what you want. You can come dressed as a sexy panda or, you know, a giant duck.
Yeah. To explain, my son was arriving at Gatwick after having been away for a week, and he is obsessed with ducks. It's one of his, I'd say, half a dozen words, and it's the most frequent.
Are you sure it's duck, he's trying to say? Something else.
He's just telling me to fuck off all the time. He really, really loves ducks. But like, getting angrier and angrier.
Right.
No, he loves ducks. And it was pretty much his first word. You know, it was basically mum, dad, duck.
Right.
And while he's been away, he found a shop that sells rubber ducks. I've, been sent lots of videos of him with ducks out there. So I thought, what could please him more than to come through arrivals and see a 6-foot man in a latex duck mask that he'd specially bought on the internet.
Well, listen, you are, I have to say, whatever else people might say about you, you're fully committed to the bits. When the bits are there, you go all in. There's no half measures.
No. Is it hot in a latex duck mask? Yes, it is, Andrew.
Oh.
Did it take them an hour to get through passport control? Yes.
Oh my God! Did. Why? What was the issue there?
That millennium bug rearing its head again.
Oh fuck!
Taking down all the computers. So yeah, it was a fascinating experience. I mean, quite surprised security at no point came over to check me out.
That's what I was thinking when I saw your Insta. I was like, I mean, that's really cute and it's really lovely that he's doing that for his son who loves ducks. But if I were a security guard at an airport, and there was a, 6'2" man standing there in a giant duck mask.
Sure.
I might have some questions.
Yeah, it's quite sort of Four Lions, isn't it?
It is rather, yeah.
If you want to avoid detection in an airport, slip on the duck mask, I guess, is what we found.
Rubber dinghy rapids, bro.
Worth saying, when he came through, absolutely terrified, of course.
It smells like Dad, but this is not who I was expecting.
Had no idea what was going on. Like, duck mask came off pretty soon to try and reassure him. I think that freaked him out even more. This duck's just peeled off its own face to reveal my father. But I had the best of intentions for it.
Oh well, look. Did he have a lovely time away?
He did. He was out near Barcelona with his mum and her family. Yeah, he had a great time. And I'll be back at Heathrow Airport tomorrow, Andrew.
Tomorrow, you're going away tomorrow, yeah.
To Los Angeles. Start spreading the news.
I mean, yes.
Those little clog shoes.
Is that one of the lines?
I don't know.
I don't
are tapping away. It's a different city, isn't it?
It is.
I'm gonna make a start. This gin's quite strong, actually.
L.A. Yes. It's all ahead of you.
It's all ahead of me. I'm
including
excited.
An 11 and something hour flight.
Yeah.
You know what? I've spent the last sort of 6 or 8 weeks slightly terrified because the Aer Lingus pilots have been on strike or went on strike, and it wasn't strike so much as a work to rule, and that meant lots of flights were being cancelled, and I was very worried that my flight would end up being cancelled from Dublin to to LA. Thankfully, they've come to an agreement. I'm on the side of the pilots. Get the money that you deserve. You know, these big companies making all the profits. Get the money. But I was still slightly worried that my flight would be cancelled. I'd have to go to London and then go to LA. But these are very, very much first world problems, I think.
Oh, you're going direct from Dublin. That's great.
Yeah.
You've got a head start.
Yeah, it's true. But I'm not going till Tuesday, so you'll still get there ahead of me. But the good thing about going from Dublin is that you go through US customs here. Do you do that there?
Oh, I don't know.
Right.
I think you have to do it at both ends. I'm not sure.
No, we go through US customs here, and then you don't have to go through US customs when you get to the US, which is great because you can just come off the plane and
sidle on through.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got a visa. I know that much because I'm working out there.
Right.
So I have to have one of those, visas.
They give you a hard time, though. You know, even though it's in Dublin, it's downstairs in the airport. They're like, and where are you going? And you tell them. And
so, Mr. Duck, what brings you aboard this flight today?
I'm going to meet all my friends in Long Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you do, yeah.
I answer only in quacks.
I don't answer questions.
Arsenal are on their way at the moment, actually. They're mid-air. Andrew,
mid-air right now. Okay. I saw the squad that they've taken out there.
26-man, like an international tournament.
Almost. Quite an interesting squad, I suppose, because there's players like Trossard, Jorginho, Kivior, Zinchenko, who have come back from their Euro 2024 exploits. Is it early? I don't know if it's early, but they've come back in time to be part of the squad that's leaving today.
Yeah, I saw that some of them were in attendance for the behind closed doors game that Arsenal played against Leyton Orient.
Oh, yeah.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
They turned up to watch. So, yeah, I think they must have gone back into Colney a couple of days ago. And, they've, straight back to work. So that bolsters it out a bit. And a lot of young players too. I think 11 from the academy, plus Omar Rakik, who returns from about 100 loan spells in various places.
Was he the guy who had the loan spell where they forgot to register him?
That sounds about right. He was at Wigan at the start of last season, and then ended up at Servette, which is Philippe Senderos' old club.
Right.
But he's back. So Servette, we can presume, have not taken up the option to buy that was reported at the time. He's a Tunisian international. And the reason he's there is that Arsenal are, when you look at the squad, pretty light at the back. Not helped by injuries to Kieran Tierney, which we knew about, and Takehiro Tomiyasu, which we did not.
We did not. I saw James Benge say it's a 2 to 3 week injury for Tomiyasu.
That sounds okay.
Sounds okay. I'd accept that, but it's just, it's a bit unfortunate, isn't it? Because, he could play a big role out there, and the injuries, they seem to mount up with him, and he's such a good player and such a great option to have in your squad. But every time you think it's on, it's off a bit,
Yeah. I mean, if it's not more serious, that's great news. But he is a player who does seem to pick up injury after injury at the time being. I've seen a few people on social media, believe it or not.
Oh, no way, really?
Losing patience.
No.
Yeah.
People getting angry on social media?
Yeah.
No, come on.
Man.
I'm so disappointed. I thought it was the utopian garden of equanimity and patience. No?
Peace and harmony.
No.
Sadly not. I mean, they all say things like, time to sell Tomiyasu, because selling injured players, I believe, is the easiest.
Oh, it's really simple. Yeah.
Straightforward. So that's a bit of a shame. And then, like a bunch of young players going. We know some of the names, Ethan Ranieri, Miles Lewis-Skelly. And then Charles Zago Jr., who we saw, of course, in the Carabao Cup last season.
Aiden Heaven,
who's quite well thought of, young centre-back. And a collection of goalkeepers where, frankly, I mean, it seems like any of us could have had a call-up, I think.
Well, the new young guy is involved. Tommy
Setford, signed and sealed.
And delivered from Ajax, yeah.
Lucas Nygaard, he's new as well.
Yes, he's new.
Karl Hein, new contract, was technically a free agent, so like a new signing, I think we can say.
Karl Hein is how we pronounce his name now. That's how it's pronounced.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, I mean, we do have Estonian listeners who are quite invested in the pronunciation.
Sure. A legacy from the Mark Poom era. And then Alexei Rojas.
He did a really interesting interview. Did you see the interview he did with the official site this week?
I didn't actually.
Right. Andrew Allen highlighted it to me, and it was like he's such a very well-spoken young man. I don't know how old he is, Alexei Rojas.
He's 18.
He's 18, and he's got he's half Russian, half something else. Colombian.
His full name is Alexei Rojas Fedoroshenko.
Right. I mean, that sounds like a tennis player.
It does. It sounds like the Russians have cloned Roger Federer.
Yeah. But we know Russians don't do anything illegal in laboratories, so that's fine.
So what was he talking about in this interview?
He was just talking generally about, what an opportunity it is for him at Arsenal and how he's determined to become a Premier League footballer and he's learned so much at this football club, but also did a whole bit about sustainability. Like, whoever was interviewing him asked him about, and you're very into sustainability. And he was like, yeah, we should look after the planet, and football has a duty because we travel and we take a lot of plane flights. We have to look into how we can make football a more sustainable business. And I can't imagine that was something that just came up on the spot. He must have had to reference that in the build-up. So
Hector Bellerin vibes.
Yeah.
He's got nice hair as well.
He does. Well, a lot of 18-year-olds have a lot of nice hair, James.
That's
as
true.
we know.
Just looking at his career history, he actually began playing for Boreham Wood, aged 5.
You wouldn't fancy him to do that well playing for Boreham Wood.
Yeah,
age 5.
that was young to blood him.
Yeah,
I would say.
I know it's a few leagues down, but he's pretty small at that point.
And then stints with St Albans and London Colney Colts. This guy's like from my ends.
London Colney Colts.
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
That feels like about as close to being in the Arsenal training ground as you can possibly be without being an Arsenal player. Maybe only Watford as training ground's closer than that. Initially part of Chelsea's academy and then joined Arsenal in 2019.
Right.
Great experience for him to be out on the tour. Great experience for all these guys.
I mean, last year there was, I saw Andrew make this point on the Arseblog news article. Last year, only one teenager made the trip on the tour. Can you remember who it was? A prize for you if you can guess.
Oh, I was in the thick of my paternity leave at that point in time. That's my excuse. One teenager.
I'll give you a clue. He's no longer at the club.
Oh, was it someone like Amari Hutchinson or something like that?
No, but you're not far. Mario Koscier-Dubry.
Alas, gone too soon. But what's quite nice, I think, for these kids is there's loads of them there. They're almost not outnumbered, which must make them feel a bit more comfortable in that environment.
Yeah, but good as well. Yeah, a good opportunity for them to sort of have that safety blanket or comfort and become integrated with the first team squad because they're going to have to play out there. They're playing Bournemouth on Wednesday, Man United on Saturday, Liverpool in Philadelphia, as we know. So I think quite a few of these guys are going to have to play. So
there's only about 14 senior players in this squad, right? And given that we're playing Wednesday, Saturday, and Wednesday again, I can see them all getting a run out. I mean,
there's a couple going out, aren't there? I think the story said that Kai Havertz
will join the squad.
Was it Kai Havertz?
Yeah, it is. He went out at the quarterfinal stage, so he'll be there.
Also, the two Brazilian Gabriels will be joining as well.
Yeah. So I think maybe the Bournemouth game on the Wednesday will be the big opportunity for some of these young guys. Mm-hmm. you'd think they'd want to go as strong as possible for United and Liverpool after that. But, what a great experience.
Yeah. What about a couple of the players who didn't make it? A couple of the younger players, the academy players who you probably think, okay, these guys, they'll be shoe-ins for the tour given there's so many people who are absent. They've got some experience, but they're not there. So Charlie Patino is one, and Brooke Norton-Cuffey is another who maybe we spoke about over the last couple of weeks as players who might potentially depart the club this summer, but who, if you're thinking about bringing a young squad, might be able to give it a sort of a smidgen of experience with their youth as well. I mean, do you think it's a case that the decisions have been made on these players and they're not bringing them because what they have to do now is find somewhere else?
That would be my best guess. To be honest, I think Omar Akik would have been another in that camp. And I wonder if this late Tomiyasu injury has changed things and they've decided, well, let's bring Omar. Because you're right, logically, those guys ought to be there based on experience. It's interesting because Charlie Patino was also being talked about as potentially being on the tour last summer. And I think his expectation was that he would be on that tour. And when he wasn't, I think that sort of precipitated his loan move and wanting to get out and play. And, I think it'd be wrong to say it was kind of the nail in the coffin for his Arsenal career, but I think it was a moment where he thought maybe my future lies elsewhere. To have not been included this time, I think will confirm those thoughts for him if there was any doubt left at this point in time.
He was involved in the friendly, wasn't he, at the weekend?
Yeah, I think he was. Was Brooke Norton-Cuffey?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, he might have a problem. We don't, he may have an injury that we don't know about. It's worth saying that too. But I thought I didn't expect Patino to be in the group. I think because of sort of, just my assumption that he is one of the players who will go this summer. It's interesting because there's probably quite a few players in this squad who could leave this summer.
Yeah. Senior and junior.
Exactly. Eddie Nketiah, Reece Nelson, Emile Smith Rowe, even people like Jakub Kiwior and Zinchenko, all being linked with moves away, and yet they're needed right now. So I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
Okay, well, we'll see how it plays out. It could be interesting to see, and it will be interesting to see what sort of a role the younger players play over the course of the preseason games in the US and who maybe features more heavily than others. Because, we've talked, haven't we, about Ethan Nwaneri and Miles Lewis-Skelly, who played a big part in the game the other day. He was involved in one of the goals that we scored against Leyton Orient, playing at left back, which we'll come to Calafiori now in a minute, but it feels like a position in which we have the most depth in the entire world. No?
Yeah. I guess if you're Mars, you're probably being told, we're thinking about you at left back. You'd be like,
no, thanks. Anywhere else, it's fine.
I suppose, despite all that depth, what options have we got on the tour? I suppose Jurriën Timber and Zinchenko would
and
be...
Kiwior.
And Kiwior, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks a bunch, guys. I don't know. I mean, he apparently did very well, was involved in the goal, and it is a position they like him in. It's not his natural position, maybe, and not where he's played most of his football to date. But sometimes you get your break in an unusual role. It is difficult to see that, given the wealth of options we have at our disposal. Although I do think at least one of those will probably leave the club before the end of the window.
You at least one of the left backs.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
we're leaving Kieran Tierney at home as well. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, at least he's upstanding. I saw him in the video. Behind the scenes.
He's on 2 feet.
He's on 2 feet, so that's good. But we've got Timber, we've got Kiwior, we've got Zinchenko, we've got Tierney, we've got Tomiyasu, and very soon we're going to have Riccardo Calafiori coming in. So there is a lot there. So I think at least 2 of the left back options we have will go. I think.
Any guesses on who that might
My
be?
guesses would be Kivior and Tierney. And I think probably Zinchenko will stay, even though there was that story, wasn't there, about his agent and changing agents. And very often when a player is considering a move, changing their representation, is not that uncommon. It's just how quickly that might go through.
Charlie Patino, another who changed agent this year, I believe.
Did he?
Yeah. I think he signed with a Spanish agency, which is interesting because he's actually half Spanish himself. I think his dad's from La Coruña. So
Right.
I wouldn't rule out him going to Spain, which might be a league that suits him in terms of his playing style.
Yeah, could do.
But yeah, Zinchenko, I mean, I guess whether he stays or goes, he is at a point where he has to be thinking about his next contract. He's got 2 years left at Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
So whether Arsenal come forward with a new deal or not, he's got to be thinking about his future. And he seems to have made a strategic change there. I think if there was a buyer for Zinchenko, there's a decent chance that he would go. But like you, I'm not entirely sure that there will be. I think Kivior feels like the player with a bit of a market around them. And also as a kind of centre-back who can play left-back, maybe closer to Calafiori. It feels like, that's the guy that we'd probably upgrading by bringing Calafiori in. And Kieran Tierney, I hope for his sake he gets fit and gets a move, because it's quite difficult to see a pathway to him playing at Arsenal.
I think it'll be a loan for Tierney.
Right.
I mean, who's going to pay? Would you?
No, I wouldn't.
Me neither.
And Arsenal had this problem, I think, last summer. There was a lot of talk leaning into last summer about Newcastle, and when it came to the crunch, Newcastle had reservations, and they'll feel 12 months on that they were right in that respect.
I think so.
When they look at what's happened with Kieran since. So, yeah, I think some left-backs will go out. And Calafiori edging ever closer. I think there's got to be a small chance that he gets out maybe for part of the tour. If we're talking about Kai Havertz and one or two others, the Brazilian boys coming out on a flight, maybe if the deal gets done, he could be on that plane.
Yeah, for sure. Didn't Zinchenko join in the middle of a tour
He
two
did.
summers ago?
He was in the US at the time.
Yeah.
With Man City, which maybe made things a little easier. But it's a big country, and they flew him in to get him there. So, yeah, I think, they've brought Jorginho in. Italy went out, thankfully, early in the tournament. So, I think there's a chance. I think there's still a few hoops to jump through. Apparently, it relates to the kind of sell-on amount due to, is it Basel, I think?
Yeah.
And exactly how that is paid. But we're close.
Yeah.
I think.
Can I ask you, do you know anything about the provenance of our interest in Riccardo Calafiori? Because I was so curious about this, because it doesn't feel to me like this iteration of Arsenal would be... they would make a signing based entirely on what a player does at an international tournament. Like, we all remember Arsene Wenger saw Freddie Ljungberg at an international tournament and said, I'll have me some of that, and just signed him. But it doesn't feel like a very Arteta-Edu thing to do, and I'm sort of curious as to what's been going on in the background. Is there any kind of... input from Jorginho, for example, who might have said to Mikel Arteta, while they're on international duty, we have this guy with a left foot that you would not believe. You should really have a look at him. You know what I mean? I'm really curious as to where this has come from. I think he's going to be a very good signing. We talked, more than once about what Arsenal were going to do with the left-hand side and whether left back was a position that we were going to upgrade on. I think that is probably the case. There might be a certain amount of future-proofing the left centre-back position by bringing in Calafiori, but I think in the short term, he strikes me as somebody who's going to play on the left-hand side more than as left centre-back. But I'd love to know, how long have we been interested? To what extent have we been watching this player rather than just the stories you see had a very impressive Euros and Arsenal have decided to go all in.
Yeah, it does predate that. He was high on a list of players heading into this summer. Someone Arsenal have watched a lot, someone they really like. I do have the sense that maybe because he was very impressive at the Euros, and I think that may have accelerated things a little bit from Arsenal's perspective. There was an interesting line from David Ornstein in his tweet the other day where he said, part of the reason Arsenal are progressing this move quickly or now is because there are other clubs looking for players of that position. Left-sided defenders are on a few clubs' wish lists this summer, and I think Arsenal are sort of moving quite quickly to see that off. Apparently, from quite early on in the interest, Calafiori was absolutely set that he wanted to come to Arsenal, which is great and a brilliant commendation for what we've done with the club. But I think at the start of the window, there was a feeling that, Arsenal, despite their interest, might not come to the table with the kind of money that it would take to get him out. And I think most people close to the situation expected him to end up in Italy. But evidently, over the course of the summer with the Euros, that dynamic shifted. Arsenal clearly were convinced by what they saw and decided to follow through that interest with, what's going to be a big signing. We're talking about a kind of Ben White level signing in terms of outlay. Yeah. But if he has a Ben White-like impact, it'll be a fantastic acquisition.
I am looking forward to seeing him and looking forward to seeing what he can bring to the team.
It's exciting, isn't it? Because if you think, Jurrien Timber, like a new signing, Claxon as well, we really could have quite a different dynamic in our build-up and how we progress play out of the back next season.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting as well because there were so many discussions about Timber and, well, he's going to be the left back. And I was never really that convinced that was the case. I think he was the best option we had at left back in preseason, but I don't think that was necessarily the plan for him. But now, it's like, well, where is he going to play? Is he going to play ahead of Ben White? I think we had a few questions about it. Maybe I can find one here. But basically, the question I keep seeing all the time is like, let me just, do I have a Timber question there? I don't. But it's about like, is Timber going to be the DM now? Is he going to be our number 6? And I'm not sure that's the case either.
We're Kolo Touré.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said to Clive the other day, the Arsenal fan base's determination to make a defender into a defensive midfielder has been something we've been living with for basically our entire lives. Queenie's Human, who's at Taking the Town, can Timber play as a DM? I mean, probably, yes. He could do a job, but I don't think that's where we're going to see him. I think it's going to be very interesting when you consider the defensive lineup and the defensive options that we have. I'm going to be furious if we concede any goals at all next season.
Yeah, I mean, we've got serious depth. If there's one thing we know Mikel loves, it's buying defenders. There should never have been any doubt. But yeah, I was just looking back now because I wrote in mid-April that Arsenal were looking for a left-back. I mean, to be fair, I think I wrote it before the January window as well. And I had so many messages from people being like, it's Timber. What about Timber? It's going to be Timber. And to be honest, I understood those messages. I could see why people would say that, and why there was a certain logic to it. But it does make for an interesting situation now. I mean, who knows? Maybe Ben White won't have to play 60 games of football next season.
He won't have to play 120 minutes every game.
Yeah, with a broken leg. And I don't know. Maybe we'll see Ben White play at centre-half here and there. Maybe we'll see Timber play at centre-half. I think it just opens up so many options and possibilities. And in answer to that question, can Timber play in midfield? The answer is probably yes. But I think the exciting thing about Timber is that he can play in midfield while ostensibly starting as a defender.
Yeah.
And it's the options that opens up. I mean, if Arsenal have a back four that has Ben White, Jurriën Timber, and Calafiori in it, for example, you know, I mean, you could play a back four. I don't think it would happen because it would leave William Saliba out of White, Timber, Calafiori, and Zinchenko with the current squad. And any one of those four could invert.
Yeah.
And step into midfield. So the options are, you know, it's endless.
Amazing. We've got so many defensive options. Back five on the first day. Davy, Benny, Willie, Gabby, Ricky. It's all good.
It's good. You know, they've thought about that. They're like, we need players who have an easy nickname for their fellow defenders to shout.
This is the what is it, you know, the tap your forehead gif.
Yeah. These are the margins, guys.
These are the marginal gains that people are talking about. But look, I'm very much looking forward to Calafiori coming in because I do think it adds a different kind of dynamic. And the left-hand side of this team, I think, is one which can do with a bit of care and attention and maybe a little more consistency. And, you know, we've got great options there when you consider Trossard, Martinelli, even Gabriel Jesus, who was on the score sheet the other day.
Yeah.
You know, we've got really good options in those wide positions. So if we can get the defensive structure behind those players set up and maybe the midfield structure as well, then I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Important question on this note from Patrick Hervey, who says, is Calafiori the most handsome player we would ever have signed?
No. Come on.
Where does he rank for you?
Okay, I mean,
I haven't paid that much attention to how handsome he is, but I've just done a Google image search.
Right?
Yeah, he's a handsome boy.
He's a handsome guy, but like I wouldn't.
He's a little bit bony for me, if I'm honest. and I would say that to his face. It's nothing I wouldn't tell him in person.
I agree with you. I think he's, you know, there's a whack of the Skeletor off him.
Yeah, he's got a bit of a Cavani head. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But those people are handsome. They just look like, you know, they've got cheekbones that are going to take your eye out.
Listen, you know, this is a football club that signed Robert Pires. So I'm not willing to engage in this discussion. He's a good-looking man. He's very welcome.
Yeah, he's Italian.
He's Italian.
Counts for a lot, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And it turns out all the stuff about his girlfriend was fake that was doing the rounds on the internet.
Oh, internet. You've let us down again.
That said, we did get some mayhem and madness. There was some, you know, flight tracker stuff going on. So return to the halcyon days of Arsenal transfer Twitter.
I know. Where is the gerbil? Only when the gerbil surfaces, or when the bell tolls one more time.
Yeah, when the bell tolls up the gerbils, Arsenal, then we can fully understand what's going on. Yeah, so look, it's going to be a good signing and one I think that will really boost the squad. Are you, or, you know, I'm guessing you're not because you've got a big gin and tonic, but are you at all concerned about the attacking end of the pitch, or are you just waiting to see what happens? What do you think is going on with Eddie and Marseille, Reece and West Ham, Emile Smith Rowe and Fulham and Crystal Palace? You know, the stories about how there's £35 million bids coming in, but Mikel Arteta does not want Emile Smith Rowe to go. Where do we...
Scratch my head at that one. I mean... I have to be honest and say I've only seen that as a tweet, so I don't know the source of the story, and it may be very well sourced. And to be honest, there's part of me that's like, well, I was absolutely convinced he was going to leave last summer, and then Mikel Arteta and Edu called Camp Smith Rowe in for a meeting and said, "We need you. You're not going anywhere.
But we're not going to. We need you.
Yeah,
but we're not going to play you."
Yeah, you're in your beautiful gilded cage.
You stay here, but don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, I can't rule out that would happen again. I mean, one thing I'd heard multiple times in the course of the summer is that Arsenal weren't particularly taken with the number 8 market in this window. You know, that there wasn't a great deal out there that floated their boat. So, that's the only thing that gives me pause for thought. It makes me think, wow, could that be true? And the honest truth is that all the people who I would probably ask are halfway across the Atlantic right now.
I did wonder about that the other day. I did wonder if, the idea that Smith Rowe might be needed or wanted could be tied to Arsenal looking at the market and thinking, well, we could get 35 million for Smith Rowe, but we're going to have to spend 50 million on a guy who, is just about okay or not really what we want, or the market might have impacted our decision when it comes to Smith Rowe. But like, if you want to keep him, if you want him to stay, and listen, I would be okay with that because I think he's a good player, but you've got to play him. What about this from Prashant Patil, who's on Twitter at Prashant_AFC. He says, if only one scenario happens, which one would you prefer? Smith Rowe sold for 40 million or Nelson and Eddie both sold for a total of 20 million?
For a total of 20?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes even our sales predictions look stingy. Well, I think that's a pertinent question. I mean, I would rather... I think I'd rather sell Emile for 40, I have to say, than those two for 20. Because, it's twice the money. And it doesn't say, and you can't sell the others at a later date.
Well, I think that's the implication. I think it's implied.
Okay. Well, what would you do?
I mean, I think 20 for those two would be terrible. But if I was thinking about it from the team perspective, like if you were to ask me the 1, 2, 3 of players I would like to keep in the scenario with those 3 players, which are the 3 I would like to keep? First for me would be Smith Rowe, second Eddie, third Nelson. So
and I would say that's probably what Mikel thinks too. Like these stories that we're reading, it may just be that. In an idea, managers like keeping players. They want as many players. They want 1,000 defenders who can play 8 different positions. They want a massive squad so that whatever happens in the course of the season, they're protected.
Yeah.
Mikel Arteta would happily keep Emile Smith Rowe if he's going to turn up to training, not make a fuss, and be there if and when he needs him. But and I wonder if maybe Arsenal feel, because I think that interest in Eddie and in Reece is genuine. You mentioned Marseille and West Ham. I think that's accurate. Maybe Arsenal were thinking, well, we're probably going to have to sell Smith Rowe because he's the one with the market. But maybe now they're thinking, well, if we can sell Reece for, 20.
15?
15 well, whatever.
20, yeah.
And sell Eddie for whatever we can sell Eddie for.
Maybe we don't need to sell Smith Rowe.
Maybe there's less of a need. Maybe Smith Rowe, I think coming into the summer, he looked like the one who you'd think, well, you should get a decent chunk of change for him. And if they think they can get that elsewhere. But then there's one other thing to discuss here, which is what Emile Smith Rowe wants.
Well, yes. Do we know that?
Do we know it? We know he wants to play.
Right.
And I guess the question is, can Emile Smith Rowe, who I believe wore the captain's armband in the friendly on Saturday, can he trust Mikel Arteta? Can he take him at his word when he says, no, you are important to me? Because I suspect he feels like, I sort of bought this last summer.
Yeah. I think, if I was Emile Smith Rowe and Mikel Arteta told me that, I go, okay, I believe you. You're a very convincing, very compelling man. But like in my heart, in my stomach, I'm not 100% sure. But so am I going to sit there like next year and go, God, he fooled me again?
Maybe you are. I mean,
maybe.
You've got to remember, this is not an ordinary situation of a player and a club. Emile Smith Rowe has been at Arsenal since he was a small child.
And he has the number 10 shirt.
And his whole life until this point has been geared around the idea that he wants to play for Arsenal. And he's had people since he was a teenager telling him, I'll never forget Granit Xhaka in the Amazon documentary saying to Emile Smith Rowe, "You're the future." And I just think when you have that weight of emotion and connection, it's never going to be easy to walk away from. And we are sort of speculating here, but if Mikel Arteta were to dangle a carrot, I could understand Emile Smith Rowe being tempted.
Same.
If I was his agent, I'd probably be saying, Emile, come on.
Maybe, but you could take the risk, and next year you've got a year left on the contract. A move becomes not much easier, but there are more options because you've only got a year. There are probably more clubs in for you who can, pay the price. And if it goes well for you this year at Arsenal, which, I think, like I said, I really like Smith Rowe as a player. I think he's got something to offer. I really do.
Yeah, what about, I mean, the other thing to consider is the clubs that are in. It's not like last summer when there was a mention of Chelsea. With respect, Fulham, Crystal Palace, they're good clubs, they're London clubs. That would suit Emile, I'm sure. But if you leave a club the size of Arsenal he'll be 24 in a week's time, your chances of getting back to that level are, I'd say, slim. Probably. You have to really thrive.
Yeah, but you've got to play as well. You've got to play.
Yeah, I mean, how long do you put off a career for the chance of your dream career?
Yeah, that's it.
I could understand whatever decision Emile Smith Rowe takes, and to be honest, I think the club will be kind of led by that. If he finds the resolve to sit down and say, thanks for the offer, thanks for everything, I've reached a decision and I think it's over for me here.
Yeah, I want to go to Palace or I want to go to Fulham.
Then I think the club will respect that, to be honest. And I think, for all the problems that have existed, injuries and not getting playing time, the relationship between Emile and Arsenal in both directions remains a really positive one. And I think they will want to respect his wishes. He's just got a hell of a decision on his hands.
Yeah, he does. It's got to be tough, to be a player who's come through the ranks and you have that connection with the club. It's got to be a wrench to leave.
It's hard for any player who feels that they're sort of have to leave a club. But I think particularly in that case, given the depth and the strength of the connection.
Okay, well, we'll see. As it stands, he's on the tour. He's in the squad for the tour and is likely to play quite a significant part in the games that we've got lined up in the US. And we can keep an eye on him. We'll report back over the next week or 10 days, because we'll be watching those games and we'll be able to talk about them here on the podcast. How about we take a break here? We've got some questions, I think. So we'll do those and more in part 2 right after this. Welcome back to the Arsecast Extra. This is part 2 of the show where we answer questions that you send to us on Twitter at Gunnerblog and at Arseblog, also on the Arseblog Discord chat server, which you get access to if you are an Arseblog member on Patreon. James, you had so many questions about a departure rather than an arrival, which most people are invested in. There was a lot of chatter over the weekend about a potential departure. That is Chido Obi-Martin. And on the Discord, John Larkin says, with regards to Chido Obi-Martin, do you feel he's being badly advised by his agent, Or do you think it's just the case he doesn't see a pathway to first-team football at Arsenal? Considering he has the same agent as Saka and Eddie, it's hard to think his agent isn't on good terms with the club, so it does seem weird we couldn't convince him to stay, especially as you would think his future would be better with us than with Manchester United.
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? So to peel back the curtain. Do you peel back a curtain?
No.
You pull back a curtain. What do you peel back?
Bananas.
So to peel back the banana a little here, I was on the work kind of chat on the weekend, and our Manchester United reporter Laurie Whitwell came in to the chat saying, "Oh, I've got a small little story here. Some kid called Chido Obi-Martin, in talks about potentially joining Man United. Don't know if we want to do anything on it, or blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh, that's not going to be a small little story," because knowing Arsenal fans and knowing the internet and knowing the degree of hype around him, I was able to pass on the benefit of my wisdom that was actually quite a big story. And he and David, I think, checked it out and ran it, and lo and behold, the reaction was
interesting.
What I anticipated. I mean, it's interesting because he's a player who's been at Arsenal, but I think really he's not essentially an Arsenal player anymore. He's kind of decided, I think, that he's going to go elsewhere, and he's pretty much free to do it. So it's not an area where we have a great deal of control. The battle has already been lost in some respects, but people are not happy, eh?
I mean, that's true, but it's hard to gauge,
Sure.
There is a tendency, I think, on the internet for people to get very angry about things. This could be a surprise to you.
I don't know, Andrew. I'm not sure about that, but yeah.
I mean, I get it, I think people always... There's this... The weird thing is, right? Fans demand that clubs make big signings for big money to come in and improve their teams, but at the same time, they want academy players to be brought through and integrated to get to the level of these big money signings who are at that level because, they're some of the best players in the world. And it is I think it's a weird dynamic. I don't think the two things necessarily go hand in hand. And I get the idea that, like, some people will say, well, we're losing a player to Manchester United. This is terrible. It's embarrassing. Yeah, I mean, I understand. In the rivalry stakes on Twitter or whatever, sure. Me, I'm not telling anyone else how to feel. I can't get furious about a 16-year-old leaving. I just can't do it. I don't have it in me because I'm looking at the Arsenal squad right now, and there are more pressing issues in my mind than a 16-year-old who could be fantastic or could be J. Emmanuel Thomas or Arturo Lupoli. Someone who scored a load of goals at academy level, and everyone thought, wow, this guy is the next big thing. It could go either way. There's no way really of knowing, particularly, I think, when a player like the guy we're talking about has probably a significant physical advantage at this stage of his young career, right? So it's really hard to gauge. But I also accept that there is maybe a wider discussion to be had about young players leaving Arsenal when we probably should maximize more of their potential or revenue, if that makes sense, when you look at some of the players like Kosher Dubry, who we mentioned, left for free, Rule Walters left for free. I think that's part and parcel of youth football, by the way. I'm not saying it's a problem that's unique to Arsenal or anything like that. So I do understand it from that perspective, but I can't get that cross about it,
Yeah. I mean, young players move around. We took Rule Walters from Spurs.
We took Chido Obi-Martin from was it a Danish club? He joined in 2022.
I mean, he's barely been at the club that long. I think, and it's interesting. We just had that massive conversation about Smith Rowe and the wrench of him leaving and what a big decision that is. And, Chido Obi-Martin is 16 and I think has been on the books at, a few different clubs already at this point in time. Was with them Danish side KB prior to coming to Arsenal. So I'm with you. I can't identify with that level of sort of anger and opprobrium, but I think, to be fair to people who are upset, I think it's probably, and I know this isn't what you said, but it's easy to sort of oversimplify, isn't it? And think, well, people are asking that this guy gets first team minutes, or, that he's part of the squad next season or something like that. Whereas I don't think anyone reasonable is really asking for that. I think it's more, have we squandered an asset here? Whether that be someone who plays for Arsenal, or maybe someone who never plays for Arsenal.
Well, yeah,
a valuable asset like Mika Biereth, who we sold this summer for, 4 million quid and some healthy
sell-on clauses. Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is that he's 16, so he couldn't sign professional terms. We couldn't tie him down to professional terms. And from what I've read, and maybe you know a bit more about it, that the club made him a very good offer. They were prepared to push the boat out a bit, and he has decided to go in a different direction. I'm not sure there is much you can really do about that, when a player is 16 years of age. I mean, the other sort of aspect of this conversation is the one that involves the word pathway. Can young players see a pathway to first team football at Arsenal? Again, going back to Kosher Dubry, we talked about him last week. We basically said, well, we can understand why he left the club, because he's looking at the Arsenal first team and who's in his position but Bukayo Saka. So it is difficult to see a pathway when you've got a player like that ahead of you. And I'm not saying that specifically applies in this situation, but how do you view that overall conversation about how young players might view Arsenal as a club which gives them the chances that they're looking for?
Well, listen, it's out there, isn't it? It's a narrative that is gaining some traction and some momentum. And I do think that is a problem for the club. Like, it doesn't really matter if it's true. If it's something that people are saying in football, which it is, then it's an issue. And there might be the best reasons that there is that pathway is more difficult to define. It could just be that we've had a really good generation of talent. We've got young players like Saka in the team, and this is the best Arsenal team for 20 years. And therefore, and it's a very young squad as well, and therefore it's difficult to find that pathway. That all may be completely fair and reasonable, but it's not a good thing. It's not healthy or helpful that people are talking in that way.
Yeah.
And they are. I'm not saying they're right. They might be people with axes to grind. They might be speaking in bad faith, but it's something I'm hearing. It's something you're hearing on the internet. Everyone's reading it on social media, but it's something that's also a conversation topic in football. So
to what extent does that make it really important for Arsenal to change that perception, change that narrative when it comes to young players who are maybe almost ready, on the cusp of making the first team? And I think, obviously, what Chido Obi-Martin did at academy level was very, very impressive. He scored a load of goals, but he scored a load of goals against kids his own age, right? It's a different prospect when you've got to, do that at a senior level. And I'm not saying he can't do it or won't do it. That's not it. But when it comes to somebody like Ethan Nwaneri or even Miles Lewis-Skelly, the two players maybe at academy level who are closest, are those conversations that Mikel Arteta and Edu and Per Mertesacker need to have going into this new season about how they're used, how they're seen to be used, how they're developed, It's not just a case of giving them minutes for the sake of giving them minutes. You know, they're going to get minutes because they're good players and they have a chance to make it through. But, you know, a situation where I don't know if it'll be the case this season because the Champions League format is a bit different. But, you know, if you have, I'm not going to say a dead rubber in the Champions League, but maybe those are the games where you can give them more minutes. And maybe with a bit of luck in the Carabao Cup or the League Cup draw or the FA Cup draw, you've got more opportunity to give these young players minutes. And by doing so, you're sort of changing that perception that we've spoken about.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds cynical, doesn't it? But I think that is what should happen, to be honest. You know, whether Mikel likes it or not, in some respects, I think it's almost something that Edu, as sporting director, might have to sit down with him and say, this is something we need to do for perception, for optics. I know it sounds absurd, right? Because sport shouldn't be about that. But the club are aware of this narrative and they won't like it one bit because it sort of goes against everything the club prides itself on. You know, the academy is a massive part of our identity. And I think we know as well that the club aren't opposed to making gestures like this. You know, we all remember Nwaneri coming on when he was 15 at Brentford at a kind of important moment in terms of obtaining his commitment. Again, with West Ham in the away game in the Premier League back in the spring. I think that we can expect to see a bit more involvement. I think particularly for those two. And to be fair, like I've not heard any negative noises from those camps about how those players have been handled. I think, you know, a lot of what we're hearing is players saying, or players camps maybe saying, oh, they're not getting a chance. But maybe you're just not the leading light, you know. And Obi-Martin's different, I think. But you know, I think those two are really well thought of, and I'm curious even to see how they get on in the tour.
Yeah, same.
But I think that will only count for so much, really, won't it? Mm-hmm. You know, it's when the real competitive football starts. Can they stay around the squad? Can they be regularly, you know, making the bench? Can they get on here and there? Can they play in the Carabao Cup? I think those are necessary steps. And I think it's almost something the club has to address just to kind of reset a bit and correct this narrative that's building. Do you think the same?
Yeah, I think so. It is important. It is important because, you know, we've heard about how Arsenal are going to try and recruit at academy level as well. We've seen that with the goalies, with the goalkeeper, and you know, part of making that process easier for everybody is the ability to say, well, we do give young players a chance. And look, let's acknowledge as well that this is a summer where people are talking regularly about selling Reece Nelson, about selling Emile Smith Rowe, about selling Eddie Nketiah. Players who have made that progress and have taken that pathway to first team football and who are good players, but who have maybe just fallen a little bit short of where we need those players to be in our squad right now.
Absolutely. But I suppose people might say, yeah, but we could be talking about selling Chido in, 5 years' time for 20 million. And that, that would be preferable. And I do understand that. I mean, it ain't all bad news. We have just taken a very good young goalkeeper from Ajax, 18 years old. Where could you want to be in terms of pathway to a first team other than Ajax? He's come to Arsenal.
Yeah.
England under-20 international. He's chosen to make that move. So we do still have pull, and I think we'll make other additions at academy level this summer. And I think, to be honest, that Nwaneri and maybe Lewis Skelly, we will see them here and there. And I think it will do a lot to dampen down this kind of call for a pathway. But it's an interesting discussion, and I think it will rumble on. And I think we have to engage some critical thinking as fans, and certainly as journalists as well. When we hear criticism of the academy, we have to think, well, where's that coming from? You know, and could that person have a bias, an axe to grind?
There's more going on behind the scenes than we're aware of, and that certainly Arsenal will very rarely, very, very rarely address publicly. Like a situation like this one with Chido Obi-Martin, you know, we've clearly tried to convince him to stay, and he has decided, and he and his agent or representatives have decided, no, let's go elsewhere. Let's see what else is on offer. It's not just a case that like Man United Academy good, Arsenal Academy bad. There's a lot going on.
No.
And, you know, more than ever, what is being offered to young players, and not just to young players, by the way, incentives to family members, which is not a new thing by any means, but certainly incentives to family members as well might have a part in some of the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I don't know the details of this case, but you're absolutely right to say that goes on in football all the time. And I'm not saying they would have had to do this, but I don't think Arsenal should be breaking the structure for any 16-year-old, really. Unless they're like Messi.
100% sure that they're going to be Messi as well.
Yeah, because, you know, you just can't. Because what does that do to everybody else? You know, it changes everything. And you've got to be sure. And you've got to remember about these young players. Arsenal, they know and understand things like growth and physical development in a detail that we can't touch. You know, they know when players have had their growth spurt and when other players are going to have their growth spurt. They can make projections based on that. Now, look, get it wrong, right? Arsenal let, what was it, a 9-10-year-old Harry Kane go, and you know we all know how that turned out. You can't, you can't always get it right. But equally, you know, there might have been people up in arms when a teenage Chuba Akpom left, or Benicophobe, or if Eddie Nketiah had gone at 17, 18. Sure. You know, and maybe it wouldn't have been the disaster some would have imagined. So I'm with you. I think I can't get upset about this one young man. But I think it's a really interesting debate about the pathway. And I'm curious to see how the club respond to it. Because I think it's approaching a point where it warrants some sort of response.
For sure. I think it's your question.
Oh, sorry. I thought I'd been cut off there.
No.
I'm still here.
You're there.
Oh, that was a big question. I feel like I need to reset now. What have we got? I mean, this. Well, okay. How about this? Sahil Bansal. On that theme, I guess. Who would you like to see start in the Bournemouth game? Can you make some sort of lineup prediction?
Oh God, I'll have to look at the
squad.
The squad. Let me have a quick look here. Go to the old Arsenal.com.
I mean, I think Carl Haynes
going to be in goal.
As much as I've, intrigued to see Tommy Setford and like the sound of Alexei Rojas.
I mean, the back four. I mean, the four most senior players are Ben White, Zinchenko, Timber, and Kivior. So you could play.
Do you think they'll do that?
I don't know.
Josh Nichols, I think, is a fullback. He's with the squad. I confess, not a player I know particularly well. 17-year-old, predominantly right back, can play left back.
So I think if you're picking on the senior players, it's going to be Ben White, Timber. I mean, Timber could play right back. Ben White could play centre half. Timber could play right back. Ben White could play centre half.
Yeah, true.
Kivior is your left centre back, and Zinchenko is your left back.
So yeah, Zinchenko, Kivior, White, Timber, something like that. Do you think it will be that? Do you think they'll put the senior players out?
I don't know.
Like, could it be a bit soon for Zinchenko and Kivior?
Maybe. I presume it's a bit soon for the other guys as well, though. But, I mean, it could be 45 minutes.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw, just because, you'd imagine those guys are going to start the United game at the weekend. Maybe it'll be 45 minutes. But I think defence, when you look at it, could be where a young player gets a chance. Whether it's Lewis Skelly as a left back.
Yeah.
Or Aidan Heaven, maybe.
Even though he's listed as a midfielder, Lewis Skelly.
Yeah. In that first game, given that Kivior and Zinchenko have a matter of days between them, I think he's got a chance. Midfield. I don't think Jorginho will play.
No.
Because he's just joined up. I think
Partey, Odegaard, Vieira, Partey, Odegaard, Smith Rowe.
Yeah. I think it's possible that Odegaard won't start, or he'll start but not play that long. Because again, I think he'll start the other two friendlies. But, in Vieira, Smith Rowe, there are kind of more experienced options, aren't there, than the likes of Ranieri or Saladin. I think he's an interesting young player, by the way. I mean, I know he's not...
I don't know. I really don't know enough about him. I mean, I see his name all the time, but...
Yeah, copy and paste it.
Yeah.
Well, he's 20 years old now. And I have to say, whenever I've seen him play with the 23s, I think there's something there. He's been on loan at Den Bosch, I think are in the second tier Dutch football. I don't think Arsenal is going to be where he makes it, but he's a nice player to watch. And then up front, some sort of combination of
Jesus and
Nketiah, you'd think.
Yeah.
Again, maybe there's a chance
left.
for Charles Sago Jr. or Ranieri, maybe on
the right-hand side. I'd like to see Ranieri get some minutes. Some good minutes.
I think he definitely will. I think a lot of these young players, all the ones we've mentioned, I think will get on in this Bournemouth game. It's one thing coming on in a game when there've been 7-8 changes, and half the team are academy players. That's a very different thing, isn't it? To, I don't know, Lewis Skelly getting a chance in a back four with Timber, White and Kivior, for example, or Nwaneri. It's one thing in playing in a midfield with Salah-Eddin and Charles Sacco Jr., but if he's playing in the front three with Jesus and Odegaard or whatever, it's a very different. Do
you think that will be part of the thinking from Mikel Arteta? Is I've got these young players. What is the best way for them to get the most out of this tour? Is it right, I'm going to play all the first team players in the first half of this game and then throw on a load of kids? Or is it a case that you try and mix and match, or you try and augment their inexperience with experience, and pick a kind of half and half team for each half, if that makes sense?
I mean, honestly, knowing Mikel Arteta and thinking of pre-seasons past, when it comes to particularly the United-Liverpool games, I think he'll just pick as strong a team as he can pick and go from there. But if it was down to me, I'd like to see more of a mix and match. I think it's kind of more fair to some of these young players and more interesting to see how they cope in that environment.
Sure.
I'm just looking back at the team he picked for the Leyton Orient game. So that was Carl Hayne in goal. Hayne. White, Timber, Heaven and Lewis Skelly. So that was a sort of half and half.
Mm-hmm.
Then he played Partey, Odegaard and Vieira. And then Nelson, Jesus and Nketiah. So he went pretty strong, but just a couple of young defenders in there. So I think a lot will basically depend on what sort of shape Kivior and Zinchenko have come back in. Yeah.
Well, we'll see. We will see. What about this one from Speckled Jim? Which of our very best players last season will play even better this year?
Well, I mean, I hope all of them, but who do I back to be even better? I mean, my first thought is Bukayo Saka, actually. I just think he has it in him to get better and better. And I know he had an excellent season in a lot of ways, but I think I don't put many limits on his potential.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
The one that sprung to mind for me was Martin Odegaard, because he's had not a summer off, but he wasn't away at an international tournament, and he was certainly talking about that, how he would have liked to have been there.
Yeah, of course.
That he really wanted to be there, that for him, the ideal summer would not have been to have the break, it would have been to play for Norway at a competitive level. Nevertheless, he has had that time off. He really strikes me as somebody who's got the drive and got the determination to, when we talk about they just missed out on the title and will they come back stronger? He really strikes me as one of those players, right, who will not be happy until, I think this is probably why Arteta likes him as much as he does, not just because of his qualities as a player, but because of the personality. I think he is one of those people who will not rest until he's got the trophies. He went to Real Madrid at 15. That's a big step. I think he really is determined to help this Arsenal team and lead this Arsenal team to silverware. So he was the first one that sprung to mind for me.
I mean, potentially the next 2 years are kind of the make or break of his career. Or maybe, they're massive for him because he's 25. He'll be 26 in December. He's obviously playing at the top of the Premier League with Arsenal. And I think there's a bit of a feeling that if this team are going to do it, that might be the kind of window the next few years. And with Norway as well. He's the captain of Norway and there's a World Cup in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
And I think, especially having missed out on the Euros, he will be absolutely driven to be part of that tournament. So this is a big period. And I share your feeling that he's perfectly capable of rising to that challenge.
Yeah.
But it's funny to think he'd be 26. I think of him as very young.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
It is kind of crazy. My boating arm says, do you think PRS has had an impact on how Arsenal have approached this summer transfer window?
Maybe. I don't know. In what way?
Well, he then says, or is it purely down to having a large first team squad? I mean, the only way I can think in which it's impacted it is, it hasn't been the catalyst that it is for some clubs. We didn't have to get all our business, a load of outgoing business done before that end of June deadline. And that might be one of the reasons that, things feel a little bit slower to get moving than they might otherwise.
I mean, maybe it's certainly possible. I think every club is aware of the financial implications of signings, wage bills, all of those things. I think they're all super aware of them right now. My guess is that it's more about two things. One is that the European Championships and the Copa America and international tournament summer generally always has an impact on business. I know deals have been done elsewhere, and it doesn't mean you can't do stuff, but I think generally speaking, it does have an impact. The other thing I would say is that this is an Arsenal squad which doesn't necessarily need major surgery. It needs tweaks. It needs the right tweaks more than, right, we have to get this guy, we have to do this, we must do that. This is a this is a squad that won a lot of games last year. This is a squad which scored a lot of goals last year. This is a squad which didn't let in very many goals. So we're very strong defensively. We're very strong from an attacking perspective. Of course we can get better. Of course we can improve. And that is the goal and that's the aim and that's what we all want to see. But I think it becomes maybe just a little more difficult to bring in those players in that context, rather than we are absolutely shit, we better get some new players in. Yeah.
And I've spoken before about the kind of nightclub, one in, one out situation at the club. I think there is a bit of that in play too. But, we think Calafiori is close. That's going to be a big signing, 50 million euros or so. David Raya has signed for the club, £27 million.
Mm-hmm.
So things are happening. It may feel like they're not. Things are happening, and I'm curious to see. I think really the sales of those players we discussed in part one is really going to be what sort of gets things moving. But I don't think those will happen until August.
Yeah,
I really think that this group that are out on tour are probably going to stay with the club for the most part until they come back from the US.
Yeah. What about this one then from Tom on the Discord? He said, with Calafiori incoming, could you see us changing to a 3 at the back? White, Saliba and Calafiori would give us 3 extremely competent ball progressors at the back. It could probably work with a double pivot in midfield and a freer role for Martin Odegaard.
Maybe. I mean, my voice went so quiet then.
Maybe. I see dead people.
Just being really coy. Maybe it could. I can't tell you. I sort of feel like I'm kind of going to stop answering questions about back 3s and back 4s because we play with both those things in the same game. You know what I mean? Like, depending on the phase, it's like sometimes it's a 3, sometimes it's a 4, sometimes it's a 2. Sometimes Declan Rice steps back into it and it becomes a 3. It's really difficult for me to sort of pass that. Do I think we're going to go to a conventional back 3 with wing backs? No.
Me neither.
I don't think so. Do I think that there could be some evolution in terms of how we deploy our defenders and who steps into midfield and how we create the overloads in our own third and the middle third?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. In fact, I almost expect it at this point in time.
Right.
Because you have to keep moving.
Of
right?
course. Be more unpredictable, as Mikel Arteta says. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see it either, though. I don't really see a back 3, an official back 3. I think there might be some game states where if you've got...
we saw that last season a bit, didn't we?
Yeah, but I think if you've got a back 4 on the pitch of, let's say, White, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori, if you've got that on the pitch in a game where you need a goal, I think it's quite easy to shift to a back 3 with those players.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it might be something we see more in-game than from the start.
I am curious to see, having done it at the Euros and had very positive reviews for the most part, I am curious to see if we see William Saliba play as a left-sided centre-back in this team from time to time.
He can do it, no question.
He can do it. Yeah. And I just don't foresee a scenario where he and Gabriel are going to be able to play 50 games again.
No.
Again, I hope they can stay fit, but we were quite fortunate to have that consistency of selection at the back last season, and it's quite unlikely that we'll have it again.
I think so.
To be honest with you, Andrew, all my questions were kind of like, what about Chido Obi-Martin? Is the academy on fire? Please, can we not smell Emile Smith Rowe? Smell?
See, this is the problem.
Yeah.
Edu has been trying to smell Emile Smith Rowe for the last 12 months, and nothing's happening.
Smith Rowe is this is the problem when you have a gin in part 1. You can't speak by the end of part 2.
Smith Rowe's like, Edu, get your nose out of there.
Yeah.
We should be trying to sell him, not smell him. What about this one, just to finish us off, because, you've got a flight tomorrow and we've all got to get ready and
start spreading the news.
Actually, it is song-based.
Okay.
Dewey on the Discord says, assuming we definitely sign him, everyone is saying Calafiori's song should be based on That's Amore, which I think, it works. There's probably some lyrics you could do to fit that. He says, personally, I think it should be California Love, obviously by Tupac and Dr. Dre.
I love that sound.
That's good, isn't it? I mean, that's such a good song. But can you imagine? Is it a difficult one maybe for the fans to get going? But do you have any
Calafiori love? And then everyone would have to be like,
that would be brilliant. It would be amazing if the Emirates was hopping to that. But yeah, I mean, there are others as well,
especially out in California.
Well, yeah, it could be a bit soon. Soon. California's going to have to come to terms with the fact that you're going out there to introduce the concept of the burrito to them. So you're going to have to get used to that. If you don't know what that is, you should listen to our Waffle podcast on Patreon. You can do that. Yeah. That was a whole thing.
I'm taking the burrito to... if I can get it through security, I'm taking it through to California, introducing it.
California Dreamin', obviously the Mamas and the Papas.
Calafiori Dreamin'. Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a football staple, the sort of That's Amore one, isn't it? Like, I can see that happening. I'd like us to modernise, though.
Yeah.
California Love would be great.
That would be good.
But there aren't really any other lyrics that we could tweak.
No.
That's the problem with it. It's a bit like the William Saliba chant. Do you know what I mean? It's mainly instrumental.
Yeah. That's true. I did see some people say, Californication by the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
But every time I hear of that song or them, all I can think of is that Nick Cave quote where he says, I'm always by my radio and I hear some fucking shit some garbage on the radio. And I say to myself, what the fuck is this? And the answer is always the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So we can't have that.
California Girls by Katy Perry. Do you know that song?
I don't, thankfully.
California Girls. We're undeniable. We'll be Andrew, I know you say you don't know it, but Wednesday night after we've just smashed Bournemouth, Ethan Ranieri scored 5.
Right.
We'll be driving down the highway singing California Girls by California Girls by Katy Perry.
All right. Okay. I'm there.
But what's good is we've got so many options.
Many, many options. All right, look, we had better leave it there. Get this podcast out for everybody. James, you have safe travels. I will see you in the week. Obviously, looking forward to that. We will do our best to keep the podcast schedule going for you while James is out there and I'm out there as well. But obviously, time zone differences might play a part. And I'm guessing, I'm not saying this is certain, but there might be an impact by gin and tonics or spicy margaritas
true,
or burritos when they go crazy in California. But we will do our best. To those of you out there, looking forward to seeing you at the event on Thursday and looking forward to seeing you if you're at the games. Do say hello. For now, take it easy and we will catch you on the next one.
Bye-bye.